USAID, through the Kenya Crops and Dairy Market Systems project, has rolled out a program aimed at supporting smallholder farmers access inputs and markets. Through a private sector-driven approach, the program employs the use of incentives, training and linkages to drive increased productivity and income for farmers. Our business editor, Betty Kiptum, spoke to the Kenya Crops and Dairy Market Systems Chief of Party, Dr. Robert Mwadime, on the impact the project is having on smallholder farmers.
Watching KBC Channel 1, my name is Betty Kiptum. Now we want to have a conversation about why the smallholder farmer needs support right now to ensure that their production increases. Over 70% of farming in Kenya and Africa is done by smallholder farmers, but of course they face quite a number of challenges. There's a lack of market access, there's also lack of information that is affecting these farmers, and of course the aging farmer, how to ensure that the young people are also incorporated into farming and agriculture at large. To have this conversation is Dr. Robert Mwadime. He is the Chief of Party at Kenya Crops and Dairy Market Systems Project of USAID. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Karibu sana. So could you just tell us how this project came about and what it is about?
So KCDMS, or Kenya Crop Dairy Market Systems Project of USAID, started in 2017. As usual, USAID makes a call and then you put yourselves in consortium and apply. So we, as RTI International, it's an American company, together with two Kenyan companies, we were able to come together and actually bid, and we were able to be awarded this activity. It was a 5-year activity that ran between 2017, went through all the turmoils of between 2017 up to 2022, we all know them. And then in 2022, last year, after the end of it, USAID came back to us and asked us that we could also bid, or we could also be given additional resources to run for another 1 year to be able to address new challenges that were able to come around that time of 2023. You know, there was elections, there was the Russian-Ukraine war, and it was just after the COVID, effects of COVID. And so there was a lot of disability within the economic systems, within the production systems, within the logistics systems. And so USAID asked us, okay, you guys take 1 more year, here's funds, continue doing what you've been doing very well, and reach additional farmers.
Let's just talk about those 5 years first of all. What did you achieve for the farmer especially?
So in the first 5 years, our main task was actually linking the farmer with markets. And by markets, we are talking about linking farmer with either the input markets. So those are things to do with all the kinds of inputs. It meant us working with the private sector, with the county governments and with cooperatives and others to link farmers to the input market. But another task was to link farmers with the buyers, so that kind of a market, so the off-takers, the market, whether it's trade or it's export market. So that was the main thing. And we did that in 12 counties, 9 counties in the western part of Kenya, and 3 counties in SEC region, the southern eastern part of Kenya. And during that time, we dealt with 5 key value chains, or 5 key commodities. So we dealt with mangoes and did a lot of work with mangoes, especially with southern eastern Kenya. We dealt with avocado, did a lot of work with avocado, especially in western Kenya, dealt with dairy, trying to improve milk production, sales of milk production in all these counties where we did a lot of different work in area of dairy. Then we did bananas and other commodities that we were actually working with. So in the first 5 years, that was the main thing. So we worked with exporters. Now, if you ask me what was our main achievements and impacts during that time, we were able to reach around 310,000 farmers in these 12 counties. And by farmers, I mean smallholder farmers. We rarely worked with large-scale farmers. Mainly is smallholder, people with 5 acres or less, and mostly people in very remote areas. So those farmers who are smallholder in very remote areas rarely reached by markets, rarely been able to access. We were able to include within our project a social inclusion where we made sure that women and youth, and especially young youth, had a chance to participate in our activities because they can easily be left out. They rarely participate in agriculture, they rarely participate in markets related to agriculture, but how are we going to pull them in? But also other people who are not as privileged, orphaned children, people living with disability, widowed women. We tried to bring them in to participate in our activities.
We know that for farmers in Kenya, production is still very low, even compared to other markets, production, say, per acre. What exactly did you do to ensure that this production increases, and did you see any results from that?
So in the first 5 years, a lot of the work was to link them with markets, whether inputs and so on. So let's say, for instance, the productivity in dairy. Just to give an example, I can give different examples, but let's say in dairy, in these counties, they are not traditionally dairy counties. I mean, Taita Taveta, where I come from, is not a dairy county, neither is Busia. And so we worked with these counties first to improve the breeds of animals. So we worked with counties to see how do we use new technologies in breeding where would improve the genetic potential of the cow. And so we did a lot of artificial insemination in almost all these counties, working with the county. And it was two ways. Some counties did campaigns to have as many farmers as possible absorb artificial insemination. Some invested in extension, but some also invested in semen and keeping the semen. So they bought the semen, but we worked with the private sector to make sure that our semen reaches the farmers at reasonable price while it's still of high quality. But also we worked on the nutrition of the animals. So you can get the right genetics, but does it reach its potential? So nutrition was a major aspect, the animal nutrition, making sure that they are supplemented, but also making sure that fodder is available. Remember, Kenya is a very seasonal country. There's a time when in those areas there's a lot of fodder. There's a time when there isn't any. How would we make sure that there's enough fodder during that particular time? But also treatment of the animals. And then also, don't forget, USAID has very many activities. It's not only us. There were some working on water. So how do we bring that water to the dairy farmer in some of these communities? Like if you ask Makueni, I'm a dairy farmer, water is very far from my place, I'm buying water. How do I make sure that the water is closer to me? So we partnered with other USAID partners to make sure that the impact of the activity is more visible, and worked with other government activities also. So if you take, for instance, Makueni, we worked with the county government to make sure water is available to the dairy farmers as it's been made available elsewhere. So you can see we worked to increase the productivity of animals. We worked in various areas. The same thing with crops. We might have worked to improve the quality, the health of the soils, or we might have worked to improve access to fertilizer, or that we might have worked to make sure that the private sector avails the knowledge that sometimes it's just knowledge that the farmer need on how to space the crops, and so increase the productivity.
All right.
But it's not just increasing productivity, it's increasing productivity for the market. I think the farmer it was a big mental change that you're not producing just to produce. You are producing to meet the quality of a certain market.
Of course, during these 5 years, as you said earlier, there were quite some shocks that came for the farmer. Yeah. There was COVID-19, and then followed by the the elections that we had. Russia-Ukraine war also happened, affected feed shortage. So how can farmers prepare for such shocks? How can they prepare, and can they really do it alone, or are there partners that are helping them?
So, yeah, that's a very good question. A single farmer can try to do something, but it is best done if it's a bigger part of the community. It's better done if it's the whole county. It's better done, of course, if it's the whole country, because it affects not just the farmer, it affects systems. The financial systems are affected, the buying, the logistics systems are affected, the supply systems are affected. So the farmer may try as an individual to put all the capacity he needs or she needs to prepare herself for any shocks. So one capacity is able to anticipate. For instance, now we all know that El Nino is coming. So we can anticipate what is going to happen during El Nino. Now we need to anticipate that, but we need to come together, the different systems, and actually prepare ourselves for the El Nino. So there were shocks that the farmer could have anticipated. There were shocks that the farmer could not have anticipated. The farmer could have guessed what is going to happen during the election, but the farmer could not have guessed what's going to happen about COVID. So was just caught unawares, thought probably it's going to take 2 months. It took longer, and every system was affected. And so, yeah, what we need to do, we can do at individual level. There's a lot of capacities we can build related to knowledge, to anticipate, to plan, to have a buffer, like savings. Farmers need to know that they can be able to save, but they also need to know there's somewhere I can run to be rescued. Can I trust the bank that in case I'm hit and I go down, I'll go to the bank or a financial institution and get support? But a farmer can also know I can put on insurance. So if I'm hit, I can actually know I've lost, but then I run and get insurance and I'm compensated for what I have. Now, to put all these systems, the farmer can know all this, but now you have to put all these systems. The government might have to come in, put the right policy that are transformative, that can support the farmer, that can actually help the farmer when the farmer needs that. The county government needs to come in and put the right system. So if you see when shocks came, some counties bought seeds and gave farmers so that the farmer can continue to produce. Some counties were able to compensate farmers for some of the losses. So it's varied. But also the private sector needs to put the right systems for them to be able to withstand. So like when we were not allowed to move from one place to place, how did we expect the farmer to get fertilizer? Some places, the border people organized themselves, and they were the main linkage between the farmer and the agro dealer. So the agro dealer now cannot drive, but gives all this to the border people, and they got linkages. So the different systems were able to organize themselves. Farmers were able to organize themselves. But the big question is, were they coordinated, moving in the right direction? Mm-hmm. Now, as a Kenyan, I can say we failed a little bit there. Everybody was doing their own thing. The financial institutions were doing their own thing to make their money. Private sector the same, the farmer to survive. But we were not all working for a common good.
As we continue seeking to export our produce to other countries, we are exporting a lot of raw material. There's still a gap in value addition. What have you witnessed in the market in terms of value addition? Are we improving? Are we growing? And what can be done to even bring more people on board to ensure that value addition in the agriculture sector is improved?
We have been working to open new areas, so that's production in Western Kenya, so that those areas can produce avocado. They have their own advantages compared to where traditionally we've been producing avocado, which is central part and parts of Eastern. So those areas, unlike the central and elsewhere, they are bigger pieces of land, they have very good weather, very good soil. The maturity of the avocado is slightly earlier than the one we produce here in Central. And so that's the production part. But one problem that persistently has existed in the avocado sector is that only around 30-20% of the avocado we produce is actually exported. We consume almost the same amount, and then there's a lot of loss because avocado just comes when it matures, and because of that loss, farmers get big losses, poor prices for that low quality avocado and the avocado that cannot be exported or consumed locally. So the question is, how can we add value? One, value to make sure that we are not just exporting raw material like you've said, but also value to absorb this wastage. So for the wastage is, can we get another product that is of high value that we can actually export? And so that's where avocado oil came in. And as KCDMS USAID invested in companies that wanted to enter into the area of avocado oil and invested for infrastructure and equipment and knowledge and all that is needed for them to produce high quality oil for the export market, but also for local consumption by pharmaceuticals and beauty companies and so on. But now the question that is there is, what about the good avocado which is not exported? Remember, exporting fetches good market for raw. That actually for that to get any substitute for the price that you get for that avocado is difficult. But how can we diversify? So now people are moving towards frozen avocado. So there's the act of freezing adds value. I don't want to complicate complicated technologies, but just freezing does that. There are people who are cutting avocado into pieces and freezing it and selling it ready to eat. There are people who are engaging in producing avocado powder. You can imagine. And there are people who, the products that come out in the process, they're using the waste to produce gas, which is being used for the same processing mechanism, or that can also be used and sold. So we're encouraging diversification. So what USAID is doing is, can we help companies in product development? So we go to a company and ask them, okay, let's develop a new product. And because you don't want to invest in it, we can co-invest in it together. And you find USAID co-invests in that kind of a thing, product development. Because in Kenya, if I develop a product, and I pay for it as a company, tomorrow everybody is doing it. So why did I pay for it? So that's why we need development partners to invest. And that's where USAID has decided we can co-invest with you in those things that might not benefit you alone, but may benefit other people, and especially in product development.
Could you give us your closing remarks? What does the future look like for the smallholder farmer?
Two things I think I can say is, as Kenyans, first of all, as increasingly we start producing also for the market, and especially the export market, I would say we need to move from just producing, but be knowing that we are not just producing for ourselves, we are producing for the world, and be proud of it. And when you, as a farmer of mangoes, you're producing, look at that mango and say, this mango I'm producing for the world, not just for myself. That way, you'll invest in that mango, you will actually give it the best, because you know the world is depending on me to produce this apple banana. Nobody else produces the apple banana. The government will invest in that. The county will invest in that, because they know we are producing for the world. Whether it is mango, avocado, whatever we are producing, even coffee, let's produce for the world, and let's be proud as Kenyans we are producing for the world. The second thing is this world is changing. We cannot continue doing what we did yesterday and expect different results. We just have to do it differently. Whether it's climate change, the way we handle our politics, the way we do everything, everything is changing. The way we eat is changing. What we want to eat, we have a new generation of people who don't want to eat like their grandfather or grandmother. So we must also change the way we produce. And I think that's where the private sector must be very key, because private sector are very good in noticing the small changes that are happening and quickly adjusting themselves to provide for those changes. And I think that's the direction to go, is to look at them, support them, to identify those changes and be able to move with them. And lastly, can we reduce the cost of production? This country is known to be the most expensive in production. We cannot compete with Tanzania, with Zambia. Wherever you go, even farther you go, their maize still enters this country cheaper. Their sugar enters this country cheaper. Everything of theirs enters this country cheaper. Our avocado will not compete in 2 years if we continue the same cost of production. The government must come in and support farmers to reduce the cost of production.
Thank you very much for speaking with us. I think that's a great way to end the conversation. Increasing production, reducing the cost of production for starters, and of course farmers being proud of what they do. Thank you very much for speaking with us. I have been speaking with Dr. Robert Mwadime. He is the Chief of Party of Kenya Crops and Dairy Market Systems Project of USAID. We have talked about how the project is supporting smallholder farmers to increase their production and also linking them with markets to ensure that they get the right pay for what they have produced. My name is Betty Kiptum. Do continue enjoying KBC Channel 1. Goodbye.